So welcome everyone to our session called Where Did the Incentives Go? You know, youth sports has been reshaped by the chase for the NCAA team roster spot, with parents investing in private training as early as grade school in hopes of a downstream ROI for their child. Since COVID-19, colleges have cut hundreds of programs, moving many to club status. This session explores where the trend is headed and asks, how will youth sports be impacted? How can colleges help center the model more on the values of health and inclusion? We have an incredible panel of speakers to explore this topic with you. First, we have Brian Hainline, Chief Medical Officer of the NCAA, and also a member of the board of the U.S. Tennis Association. We have Germaine McAuley, who is Director of Campus Wellness and the former AD at Spelman College in Atlanta. And we have Pam Watts, the CEO of NIRSA, which is really the umbrella organization that organizes a lot of the club and intramural activity in this country. And that's what I love about this panel, is each of you sort of understands a different piece of the college sports puzzle. But Brian, let me start with you. What challenges do athletic departments face today in supporting NCAA teams, especially in those non-revenue sports?
Well, thanks, Tom, and it's great to be with this great group of panelists. So, you know, the challenges are considerable. So, as I think most people know, the NCAA distribution to the membership was cut by over 70% when the Final Four was canceled. There's going to be a lot of challenges going forward with championships. So, you know, there's a revenue model there, and the revenues are not coming in. But I think if we take a step back, and I think we need to, it's not even about cutting sports. We're probably at a place where 20 to 30% of Division III schools may not survive this pandemic. And that's a whole other thing that we need to think seriously about. And at the D3 level, 25 to 50% of students are actually student athletes. That's very different than, say, at a D1 school, Ohio State, where you may have 50,000 students, but only 700 student athletes. So it's a challenge, and you know, we think about the economic disaster that COVID brought with us, in addition to the health and safety disaster. If we really wanted to open up our society, and part of that is sport, which is a great metaphor for society, well, we didn't do it in the way that maybe could have happened. We don't have still a good national syndromic surveillance system. We don't have a national oversight of contact tracing or testing. And so what's happened is that those with more money have been able to carry things out because they can afford what testing is available. And those without, they're struggling. So that's one part of the picture. But the other part is, when you look at the sports that are being cut, it's the Olympic sports, the non-revenue sports. And one model, one opportunity is, how do we make these sports relevant? And to make them relevant, you need to make them financially independent. And that's a unique relationship that could happen with the national governing bodies. That you take a sport like tennis, it's not just about varsity tennis, but can there be tennis year-round? And it even involves the community level, but it also involves community tennis for college players, and it becomes financially sustainable. So I think we need to step outside of the box, not just look at the NCAA, but I think there may be a great opportunity in partnership with the NGBs and ultimately the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee.
The trend on cutting teams at the NCAA level, where it's headed, if you could look into your crystal ball, Brian, where's it going to be in, say, 5 years? How is this thing going to ultimately play out?
So again, crystal ball projections. So what Division I did, and other divisions as well, to call yourself an NCAA school, you have to have a certain number of sports. So we couldn't just keep cutting, and so you only have 2 sports. And of course, those 2 sports would be the revenue sports of football and basketball. And most of the financial projections, and it's not just for the NCAA, it's for schools, it's for theater, is that things will probably start turning around in 2023. And so that seems like a long way away, and it really is. So, but as a society, we're going to be struggling to keep up over the next couple of years. But But going back to the NCAA, hopefully we have a Final Four this year, and recall for the Final Four, most of it is just playing the game. If we play the game, that takes care of the revenue for the broadcast and so forth.
You mentioned the minimum number of sports, 16 in D1. As things play out, can you see some pressure on maybe lowering that number?
Well, look, there's always going to be pressure, right? And so there's two types of pressure. There's a pressure from the student athletes and the parents and those voices that say, you just can't cut these sports because what's the essence of who we are? And then there's sometimes the pressure of the athletic directors or the athletics department saying, we just can't fund anything. So it's balancing pressures, and ultimately then you have the membership, which I think they understand the essence of the NCAA. It really is not about 2 sports, it's about 24 sports. So my hope is that 24 sport vision is the one that prevails, and we understand if we're going to really continue to be who we are and offering opportunities across the board, that's where we'll land. It's not going to be easy. I mean, these economic realities they're stark.
They're deep. Yeah. So Pam, let me ask you, all these NCAA program cuts by athletic departments, do these sports disappear or do they just transition into a club sport? And when they do transition, what does that mean? How does it differ from an NCAA team experience?
Yeah, many of them transition to the club model, and it's a great model. It still involves intercollegiate play. It's differently funded and differently supported on campus, and I think there's pros and cons both ways. In the club model, it's a lot more self-directed by the players. They have a lot more agency and expectation and responsibility around the organizing, even the leadership within the club, their funding and fundraising. They're advised, of course, by a club sport professional on campus. They have to work within the rules of the university, which are largely around, safety and risk management. But there's a lot of great leadership development that goes on in the club model, and especially at, D1 schools, the clubs in those sports are highly, highly competitive. It's a great level of play for those high school athletes that, maybe wanted to go to a D1 school for academic reasons, but weren't going to make a D1 team, and they can still really enjoy a high level of play. I will say in the transition, it's not all, sunshine and ice cream. It is different. Sometimes you get some pressure even from like the admissions office who's used to using, a varsity sport as a recruitment tool. You certainly have an adjustment for those student athletes to be playing in a different model.
Mm-hmm. So there's club, and then there's also intramurals, which is a little less serious, I guess. So, I mean, if you were to talk to a parent who's, 12-year-old or 14-year-old is playing sports, and you're going to try to convince them that, club and intramurals it's a great option, what would you say?
I think it's really about what you want out of your college experience and what's that balance of sport and academic and social activities and other, clubs and organizations not sport related that you can join. Maybe you're going to be working through college, doing internships and the like. And I think the different opportunities can give you different balance. So, intramurals is the lowest lift, probably team sport participant experience. You're playing on campus, you're not traveling, you're self-organizing. Maybe you play one in the fall, it's not year round, that kind of thing. Club is a little bit more, you are traveling, you are engaging with a league or an NGB, maybe even playing for a national championship. And then of course on up to a varsity model that is a super high level of play, really well supported by the university, but also, takes up a fair amount of time in your college experience. And so as a parent, and I'm a parent too of high schoolers, one in particular that plays sport. And so, we talk about what do you want out of your college experience and what balance do you want out of these things? I think often parents who are just looking at a varsity model, try to think through like a D1 versus a D3 experience because those have different levels. And I would just extend that out to the club and intramural model.
Gotcha. And Germaine, I'd like to bring you in here. So Spelman College, very small, historically Black college and university based in Atlanta. In 2013, you moved away entirely from NCAA sports, took the money, put it into club and recreation, and intramural type of activity. And now from what you're telling me the other day, you don't even have the intramural activity anymore. It's just all about fitness and recreation. Why was this move made, and what have been the outcomes?
So, and thank you, first of all, for having me. I appreciate it. So this move was made when Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum, who's now our former president, just had a vision of not, thinking that our students would not be going pro in athletics, and she wanted to focus on the entire campus and the entire student body. And so she transitioned. We went into what we call the Wellness Revolution in 2012 of November, which was the focus was to get all of our student body and our Spelman community to become healthy and having healthy lifestyles. And so upon that, we phased out athletics. We had 7 sports. And we had a small percentage based upon the complete student body of student athletes that played in that sport. We also were in the woes of deciding about conference, because our conference was dismantling as a part of that. And so she felt that the money could be used to build a new state-of-the-art facility, which we have a beautiful facility that is really focused on, fitness and recreation. And upon doing that, we created a number of very viable programs in our wellness program that have been very great programs for our community. And so as a part of that, we did have intramurals, and you are correct, in 2016, we started our intramural program, but because we had a number of students who felt like they just wanted to, that it was more important to just have the recreational piece, in 2018, we decided to phase it out. Our students, they have a different perspective.
And what have been the outcomes? Is your student body healthier? Have you measured this type of thing? Are the people happier? Has there been any impact, positive or negative, on admissions? What
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, we had, even in our virtual environment, because we are virtual right now, we've had more applications to come in. So that has not impacted our admissions at all. As a matter of fact, I think it's made it better. To answer your question, the outcomes, our campus is getting healthier, and they are happier. I have to talk about when I was the AD, all of this happened during my time. And so, when you've been in athletics, you've been an athlete, you've played it, and then you see something become phased out, you have to think, how's this really going to work? And I have to say that I am very pleased with the way this whole wellness revolution, the whole wellness program has really turned out. Our students are really buying into understanding the dimensions of wellness and how they all come together to help them in their life. It's a part of helping them to matriculate while they're matriculating, to maintain healthiness, and what that means to them as they move out into the world. They are change agents for their families, for their friends. And so in our wellness department, we have a wellness curriculum. Once we phased out physical education, it was important to maintain a wellness curriculum where our students would still be able to take classes. And these are not for credit, they are pass-fail. But in our classes, in our wellness curriculum classes, they do get a lot of education about, fitness and nutrition and what that means for mind, body, and spirit.
How can NCAA athletic departments best support for participation in the student body, broadly? So, is it a matter of opening up facilities for club teams and intramurals? Is it a matter of providing trainers, to guide people on best practices, or what can be done? And Brian, I'd like to get your thought on this as well.
Yeah, and I also want to comment, what you hear from Germaine there is what a good job Spelman did listening to their students and their student needs. And, I think you're demonstrating this well on this panel. This is not one size fits all, right? And so you need to be listening to your students. What type of sport experiences do they want? How many different types of sport experiences do they want or not? So to your question around, how can, maybe the club or club and intramural, side of the house collaborate with the varsity side of the house? There's great opportunity. We do see collaborations, especially at the medium to small schools, with facilities, with staffing. In recent years, the access to athletic trainers, especially around concussions, when all of that became a much bigger deal in the last 5 or 6 years, we saw great collaborations where the athletic department was offering that expertise, some of those resources to the club athletes. We've also seen some good collaborations around the leadership development and recognizing that these student leaders are leaders on campus. So for example, several years ago, the NCAA did some great work around inclusion for LGBT athletes. And as they rolled out their program on campuses, the more forward-thinking campuses invited not just the varsity athletes, but also all of the club athletes to participate in that learning. They did a similar thing, the NCAA did with some work they had done around gender-based violence, right? Same thing, like the resources of the NCAA can put together some great programs, but they worked with NIRSA to deliver it to a wider audience.
We know that students on college campuses support NCAA programs to the tune of like about a little over $1 billion a year, and student fees go to the athletic departments. How can athletic departments continue to help students feel good about some kind of return on investment? Is there anything that Pam said, for instance, that resonates with you?
Yeah, I think I'll follow up on what Pam was saying, and I think there's a lot of opportunities, and even the student athletes, so the student athlete advisory committee members, they really want to serve as role models for what it means to be a combination of a student and an athlete, and that doesn't necessarily mean an NCAA varsity athlete. So a couple other ways. So we talk about concussion. When you look at our concussion protocols, they're really not, they're resource independent. So they can serve as a model for any club sport or any way of doing sport. The same thing for our mental health best practices, which actually the International Olympic Committee took the NCAA mental health best practices and said, this should be the foundation for a model for sport across the world. And so with the mental health, I think that's a way to get into all club sports or intramural sports, however we want to do it. We have actually coming up in October another summit on, and this is going to be on transgender sport participation. And it really brings up two very, very important points. One is, how can we create an inclusive environment? But how do we actually do sport fairly at the most elite level? And I think that's important to state as well. So I don't think we necessarily are looking for a model where it's all equal and everyone can do club sport, because there's something actually pretty fantastic about achieving at the elite level and even going professional. So support them all, but let them interdigitate. So I fully expect from the Transgender Summit, where we're going to be addressing some, sometimes some tough issues for trans females. Are they taking away from Title IX opportunities, from high school athlete opportunities, or are they really broadening the inclusion environment that we so desperately need in our country? So all of these things, I think the NCAA can share broadly. And then another, it's not just at D2 and D3, there are some prominent D1 schools where the athletic trainers and the athletic training facilities are not just for NCAA athletes, they're for all club sport athletes. Now, that's not an NCAA decision, that's a university decision, but I think we need to think outside of the box. The universities can think outside of the box, and the NCAA can begin to think more broadly about how their best practices can apply to all sports at all levels.
The U.S. Tennis Association has formed a really robust partnership with NIRSA, your organization, to develop tennis on campuses. So tennis actually is the sport that may have seen the most program cuts recently, but I'm not hearing the agonizing from the USTA that you hear from other NGBs, because they seem to have kind of they understand the opportunity here in this dislocation. Can you talk about that partnership?
Yeah. So I think, one of the beautiful things about the USTA is, overall they want as many people as possible playing tennis cradle to grave, right? And so they want all the channels, robust. This isn't just about an Olympic team or just about, the pro circuit or just about the US Open. My experience with them is they've always treated, the US Open as very important. It's a big source of their revenue, but really then they are to take that and grow the sport of tennis. And so they came to us about 20 years ago, interested in growing the non-varsity collegiate space for tennis. And we did some early programs in Intramurals and then quickly pivoted to club because there was a little more action around club at the time. Our first national championship 20 years ago was 8 teams, competing in a national tournament, and it quickly grew to 64 and got capped. And so they partnered with us because they knew we had the expertise on how to engage club athletes and intramural athletes, which is a little different than varsity athletes. It's a different mindset. It's a little bit of a different culture. And they, along the way, they had to, be flexible with some of their rules. For example, it's a very tried and true thing for most NGBs to require membership of their athletes, right? And, we lobbied and said, look, if you do this, you won't grow, you won't achieve, the things you want to achieve. And so they were willing to flex on that and had great results. Part of tennis that other sports, if possible, can consider is they made it fun. And part of the way they made it fun was they used the World Team Tennis format, which is a co-ed team format, right? Yes, women are playing women and mixed doubles and men are playing men, but all those points roll up to a team format, and the men and the women travel together. It's a co-ed space, which at the collegiate level, just adds some fun and variety to the whole experience.
I want to close with your thoughts on using those human resources to make the world a better place, making the sports world a better place, right? So one of the webinars that we hosted this summer, we talked about a new program called Tennis for America that uses national service programs to recruit college tennis players to do a post-grad year of teaching tennis and mentoring in underserved communities. The founder of that program, John Bridgeland, the former White House advisor, says that this could be done in other sports as well. He would love to scale it, lacrosse for America, et cetera. Your thoughts on the promise of that type of program? Let's start with you, Brian.
Oh, I think it's a great opportunity. So often, anyone who's playing sport, they love sport. And so if you're a soccer player, you really love soccer. And sometimes, you go to college and you aren't really sure what you're majoring in. Too often, students will major in something just to get by. But to be able to give back to your sport for a lifetime, and we need to think about giving back to sport on an educational and business model for all sports. And again, that's a way if we're all collaborating and we get out of our silos and work together. And then what happens is we turn the focus to youth sport. And that's where we really need to go. And so ideally, and this is what Project Play did so well, they understood that at the youth sport level, it should be equal access for everyone.
Well, Brian, Pam, and Germaine, thank you. It was an amazing conversation. I think it's got people thinking, and I really appreciate you taking a moment to spend with us.